Welcome to Laser Reviews. Today I'll be talking about the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise. I will be covering all 6 films in that franchise in this video. I've done individual reviews of every movie in the franchise, and that's what this video consists of. It's simply just me adding them all together, making one big video where you can see all my reviews of the films in the franchise from start to finish. I tried to streamline the audio and the video, but if there are some irregularities between me talking about each film, that's why, simply because I made different videos where I covered them, then lumped them all together in this video. I hope you'll enjoy, so let's start the show. I should let you know that I will be approaching spoiler territory, or probably spoiling heavily, because honestly these are at best B movies and they're slashers and the plot doesn't really matter. The kills do, or perhaps also other things as we will discuss, but really spoiling these won't ruin any pleasure you will have, if there's indeed any way they possibly can bring any pleasure.
It's a bullshit question. It's impossible to answer.
Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984 opens up in 1971, where this family of a mom, dad, a son, and a baby son visit a grandfather who is at this care home, retirement home, I presume. He seems to be, if not suffering from brain damage, then maybe be senile, because he's just sitting in his chair, completely docile, unresponsive to anyone near him, until he's left alone with the young son, who is around 6 years old at this time. When he's alone with him, he suddenly comes alive and starts rambling like a madman that Santa Claus is really here to punish those who are naughty. That if you made any transgression during your year, Santa Claus will punish you, regardless of your age. He will even punish adults. So he just installs this fear into this young kid. And as that family is starting back home, it just so happens that a man dressed in a Santa costume commits armed robbery, murder, then stops them in the middle of the street, in the middle of nowhere, presumably to ask for help. But as the second that mom and dad stop the car, of course, the son is warning them about Santa, and he's terrified even before anything happens. He's terrified of Santa Claus, because of course he would. His grandfather just warned him about Santa. The robber dressed as Santa Claus comes up, shoots the dad, proceeds to tear open the shirt of the lady. He's about to do something very unsavory to her, but she fights him so much. Actually, she doesn't even put up that much of a fight. She slaps him once, and being slapped once makes him change his mind and just slit her throat. And not only does the audience see this, the young son escaped the car, sees this happen while hiding in the bush. The murderer then leaves them, pretty much just to die in the snow. But actually, they are lucky. They are saved and brought to an orphanage. Not one of those, nice orphanages where people care about children. This is the 70s after all, so this orphanage is Catholic and run by nuns. And oh boy, are those nuns bad people. Of course, there's one good nun, but the Mother Superior is one mean son of a bitch. It fast forwards 3 years. It's obvious that this kid is deeply traumatized about what happened. That, of course, witnessing his mom and dad die has left a permanent mark. For whatever reason, the nuns have found it difficult to believe that he still lives with this trauma, that he remembers these events. I mean, this is not a kid who was 3 years old when this happened. He was 7 years old when he saw his parents die. That is an age where memories stick with you. Especially when it's only 3 years later. Like, what did they expect? Already from the beginning, this movie reveals how bad the plot is. Christmas is approaching, so he draws a small drawing of Santa Claus and a reindeer being killed with arrows. And he's getting in a lot of trouble for that, of course, because these people, they are Christians, so I will be doing a lot of Christian bashing in this video. Please don't take personal offense to it, but just the way these people behave, wow. Of course, don't believe in trying to treat his problems and trying to treat him as a human being and trying to understand where his trauma and emotions come from. No, every time he shows any sign of reaction to the trauma he's experienced, he's being beaten by this Mother Superior. He witnesses two people having sex. He's beaten for doing that. He tries to just deal with his damn trauma, and he's beaten for it. So yes, this Mother Superior, to prove that he can be cured of this trauma, brings in Santa Claus around Christmas to the orphanage and forces the kid to sit in the lap of Santa Claus. And, the kid resists. Like, what did she expect? And as he resists violently, I should add, because, he thinks this Santa killed his parents, she beats him again. So this kid is brought up in this indoctrinated religious sphere where no matter what you do, if you do anything bad, like if you do any sin, if you have sex, if you swear, whatever you do, you will be punished for it, not just in your afterlife, but also just by the Mother Superior who'll beat you relentlessly. Of course, nothing spells Christmas like Christian indoctrination and mistreatment of children. It shouldn't get to me this much because the movie isn't that good, but it's just knowing how a lot of people have been and still are brought up by people like this, raised by fanatics. It's hard, man, it's hard. But the movie fast forwards to 1984. He's now 18. His brother, I should add, still lives at the orphanage. It's not really established. He's not really in the story that much, but he still does live there, and there are scenes with him, only that we don't know it's the brother because the movie doesn't really tell us probably that it's the brother. And this good nun who tried to help him a bit in the orphanage, she helps him get a job, and he gets a job at this toy store. Now, this is a toy store, it's important. It also has a big axe on the wall, one might say a Chekhov's axe. And he's doing quite well there, of course. He takes his indoctrination with him, so it's a bit strange. There's a love interest, but fantasizing about her, he beats himself up over it. Of course, he's not supposed to fantasize about girls, so that's a big problem for him. He gets into trouble with his manager because the manager is swearing, and it leads to him around Christmas time to instead get the job as Santa Claus in this store, which actually isn't that big of a problem for him, even though he has that trauma. Is he cured? He gets this role of course, having all the kids sit on his lap, but he's traumatizing all these children, saying that, if you misbehave, Santa Claus will come and punish you. And all the parents and all the store owners like, oh, he's so good with children, and these children have barely never talked to the parents because if they did, he would be in so much trouble. But that's just a movie. Nobody talks to each other. It's the 80s after all. Maybe parents didn't talk to their children. That's what I heard was the case. After Christmas is over, they close up the shop and have a big party. He serves everyone alcohol, like the love interest, the manager, him. The only 5 people in the store. Like, it's a very big store, it seems, but the only 5 people working there, sure. I'm not really sure you're allowed to serve alcohol to 18-year-olds in America, but no, okay, he does. He's still wearing the costume, and I guess this is the first time this kid, this teenager, is drinking alcohol because he gets quite drunk, and as he's drunk, the manager approaches him saying, "Oh, you have a long night ahead of you. You get started?" And the drunk antagonist? Just, "Oh, what do you mean? Oh," the manager, "oh, but you know what Santa Claus is doing Christmas Eve, don't you?" What? To that, of course, he replies, "Oh, I know," and that's it. Then the manager goes, "Oh, I guess I'll leave again." This party's dead anyway. This movie is poorly written, by the way. As this is going on, the love interest and the asshole manager or whatever he is, they've been kissing or flirting a bit during the party. Then he takes her aside, saying, "Oh, I have a present for you." And she, "Oh, what is it?" And he's just, "Oh, I can't just take it out. It's not for everyone to see." And she's, "Oh, I'm so intrigued." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, it's actually out here in the storeroom. Why don't you come and see it?" And she's, "Oh, I'm so curious to what you have." Like, how naive can she be? And of course, takes her to the storeroom, is about to do the no-no with her. In walks our drunk Santa protagonist, seeing as the asshole tears open her shirt, revealing her breasts. This reminds the protagonist, of course, of how his parents were killed and triggers him, making him proceed to strangle or hang with Christmas lights. And then, for whatever reason, like the morality is not, the movie doesn't really tell you what's going on that much. So he also decides that the woman needs to be killed because his mom was? I don't really know. And then he goes on to just kill everyone. He kills every single one in the store. Of course, he takes the axe, kills someone with that. And remember, I said it was a toy store, but for some reason, he finds a bow and arrow and kills someone with it. So much so, like, the arrow shoots straight through her heart, penetrating into to the reach the other side. What kind of toy store has a bow and arrow that can kill people. Like, who would give that child that kind of toy? I know it was the 80s, it was different, but still. That makes him proceed to go on a killing spree. He kills some more teenagers, fornicating teenagers. Apparently it takes him a long time because it turns into the next day and he then tries to go to the orphanage to kill the Mother Superior. Probably walking there, presumably walking there. And I will of course have to spoil it because I'll be talking about the other movies in the franchise as well. Just as he's about to kill the Mother Superior, he's being shot dead by the police. And that's about it for the main plot. Of course, there'll be more things worth talking about, which I will be doing now. So yes, this is a movie about how religious indoctrination or Christian indoctrination and unloving caretakers plus trauma creates this psychopathic behavior. Not that I really think the movie wants to make such a statement, it's just it needs a reason for this slasher behavior. A bad reason because there's really no rules, nothing is really established in this movie, it's really lackluster. But as I said, it is a slasher. It doesn't really care too much about the story, evidently. I think it has a body count of 11 people. It has a boob count of 8 or 4 pairs of boobs. You see a surprising amount of breasts in this movie. So if you like blood, if you like murder, if you like boobs, this at least has some qualities for you. It has stupid plot devices. It has a lot of boring kills. It also has some cool kills like people being strangled with Christmas decorations. It has someone being impaled on a trophy, animal trophy on a wall of a deer with big antlers, and she's being impaled on it. That's a decent kill. It has a lot of axe murders. Is it good? I don't know. It's a decent slasher. It's not a bad movie. It's a really stupid movie, but it is slasher fun. It has bad lines of dialogue. It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, the movie has cool kills. It's just everything else that really sucks about it. But no, that's often what you get with slashers. Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 from 1987 is quite possibly the laziest sequel I've ever seen. Where to begin with this one? If you've heard about Silent Night, Deadly Night before, it's probably because of the sequel. It is a notoriously bad movie. But I think what people normally don't talk about when they talk about how bad it is just how lazy it is. This film follows the younger brother. The brother who witnessed the older brother dressed as Santa being killed just as he's about to kill the Mother Superior, the woman who traumatized both of them. But it doesn't really start at the beginning. It starts with him presumably being in a mental ward or in a prison. It seems to be established that he actually is awaiting death penalty. So yes, he is probably in a maximum security prison somewhere. And this doctor is then there to try and understand him. The doctor asks to be left alone with him, even when the police tries to check up on him. He just wants to be left alone because he thinks he might not be able to cure him, but at least be able to understand his motivations for what went on. This younger brother, we still don't know what he has done at this point. And as such, he of course asks him to go through his life. To tell him about his life, to tell him what might have happened to lead up to this present moment. Also, he's apparently not the first doctor to have done this. I think it's established that he's the 3rd or 4th doctor.
You're shrink number 13.
To try and get him to tell the story and to understand him, maybe to treat him. And this is when it gets into really lazy territory. Because the first 40 minutes of this movie is just scenes from the first film. That is almost half the running time for this movie, just being scenes from the previous movie. That's lazy.
Very naughty.
And it also makes no goddamn sense, because he even talks about how he remembers his parents being killed and seeing his brother in this situation as well. And feeling his brother. I mean, the whole concept of memory is of course something that's debated and the research that kept being researched, but generally speaking, science today suggests that yes, you can be traumatized and take emotional memories in this sense or traumas with you from a very, very, very early age. But actual memories will emerge when you're 3 years or older, meaning he shouldn't be able to remember something when he was about 1 year old. But no, he remembers in vivid details something he can't possibly remember. Even the doctor actually calls him out on this. He's just, oh, but I was there. Ooh.
Because I was there.
No, is this supernatural? Is he lying? But then how would he have been told this? Because maybe if when he got older, he looked into the deaths of his parents. But then again, it's never established. So I guess he just was fully sentient when he was 1 year old. I know, already from the beginning there are major plot holes, even before the plot actually begins, even before we are past the 40-minute mark of where the sequel begins. It should tell you what kind of movie you're dealing with.
You know, I don't like your attitude.
And although we only given snippets of this in between the scenes of the first film, all the acting of the main protagonist, it is some of the worst acting I've ever seen. He always sounds sarcastic.
But kindly Sister Mary was able to find me a family.
And malevolent.
Santa Claus.
And like a salty teenager.
He didn't leave me. He was 18.
It's just bad. Anyway, so what happened to the younger brother after the death of his older brother? Well, he was adopted by, to avoid Christmas trauma, he was adopted by a Jewish family. That is actually a funny idea. I do like the idea. Christmas is everywhere around him, but in theory, he will avoid his trauma. But that doesn't mean he's gone completely, because whereas it was only Christmas and Santa associated with the trauma of the first film, this kid associates nuns with trauma as well. So much so that they are almost elusive villains throughout the movie, where when he's a kid, he's just trying to warn his mom against these nuns. And then when she looks, they just enter a store so she can't see them. And then when she looks away, so they come back out like this bad horror movie cliche. And it gives him a panic attack. So it does also show flashbacks to the Mother Superior mistreating him and telling him about the virtues, the Christian morality that will dictate his life. But also, it's only very convenient, like when the movie needs that to be a motivation, it uses that as a motivation. When it doesn't, it's just left out. And then it fast forwards again to him being a teenager. And this is something else that confused me. So they have the child, then they have someone who's supposed to be him as a teenager. That actor looks 18. But then when he talks about how he is as an adult or a young adult, the story he tells also sounds like he's probably a teenager. The way he acts is like what a teenager would do. So maybe he's only 3 years older, but they cast a completely different actor to play him when he's 3 years older. Because reasons. So I rewatched these scenes to make sure I understood what was going on. It turns out it's even more stupid than I first thought. So as a child, he is supposed to be 12 years old, although the kid playing him looks maybe more like he's 10 years old. So he's 12 years old, then he says 5 years later. That's when he is cast as the teenage character I described. 5 years later means he's 17. This character is only in 2 scenes. One where they visit the grave of the now deceased adoptive father, and one where he actually commits his first murder doing someone trying to do the big no-no. Then they decide to get a new actor to play him for the rest of the film. Now, when we see this actor the first time, we don't know how much time passes, but when we see him the first time, he says, now I'm 18. Meaning that instead of just having one character play him from being 17, and then 18, and then the rest of the movie, they decide to have one character play him when he's 17, and then pick someone else with a different hair color, who looks very different, to play him when he's 18. This is one of the weirdest decisions I've ever seen in a movie. What were they trying to achieve doing this? It only adds confusion. Why have someone else play him when there's only a 1 year difference? Then just say, okay, he may not look 17, but just cast a 20-year-old. All the movies do it all the time. This movie can do it as well. But no, they decided to cast one character playing him when he's 17, and then another one to play him when he's 18. This is why this movie is frustratingly bad, but in an entertaining way, because it does these things that's just so abominably, frustratingly, mind-blowingly stupid that I can talk so much about it, and that you should see it. Let's move on. And he meets a girl, they fall in love. He thinks that he's the first partner she has had, which is important for him, because you're not supposed to be promiscuous according to the way he was brought up. Also, this woman is probably also in her mid-20s. It's really confusing how old he's supposed to be. They go to the cinema together. At the cinema, they are enjoying themselves, watching. Sorry, this movie it's impossible to talk about this movie because it's so weird, so random. At the cinema, there are some hoodlums who are talking too loudly in the cinema and being annoying. They are probably supposed to be annoying teenagers. Again, they look like they're in the mid-20s. And the movie that they're then trying to watch, apparently he didn't know what kind of movie he would walk into. Like, he has no idea what he's going to watch. And then it's apparently a Christmas slasher. But not only is it a Christmas slasher, it's just the exact same scenes from the first film where the man who killed the parents, the scene where he kills the shop owner, robs the convenience store, that is what this film opens up with. Like, what the hell? What's going on here? You would think it's a parody, but this is not a parody. This I think, is a serious film. And as he realizes that this is a Santa killing, like, he switches.
Punish.
Trauma is being triggered, and he decides it's time to murder. So he goes up and kills the teenagers, annoying teenagers. Nobody notices people being killed in the cinema. And as he's killing these annoying teenagers, these punks, this other guy, who also looks like he's 25, sneaks down and behaves like this little teenager kid towards this woman. It's her ex-boyfriend, Chip. The next day they're walking around and suddenly they run into this Chip guy again who has a different hair color and he's being an asshole. That makes our protagonist, or should I say antagonist, take his face down to the car battery and just short wire his brain. And of course the girlfriend becomes terrified about what she just witnessed, so he kills her as well, because that's how these traumas work. Of course he keeps saying naughty, because that's like his traumatic catchphrase in this movie. And this policeman comes up to him, seeing what has happened, and is the world's most stupid police officer. So stupid that he gets killed by this guy. And as the antagonist picks up the revolver of the police officer, he just starts laughing maniacally. And then he just goes down the street, just shooting people. And that's when he walks down, sees a guy putting out his garbage, and exclaims,
Garbage day! Huh? No!
That's where that important famous scene comes from. As he continues down on his murder killing spree, the cops arrive. He's about to blow his own brains out, but he's out of bullets.
No more bullets.
But then it's revealed that once he's done telling the story, so the doctor is recording this interview, and he's used the recording tape, to choke out, kill the doctor, and somehow manages to escape this prison or wherever they are. How? He kills the doctor, but there are guards outside the door. He can't just escape. How does he escape? The security... Please write good movies, not this shit. It's insane. And what he does is, apparently the Mother Superior is still alive. I might have missed something, but she is scarred in her face, like she's been burned by something. I really don't think we see what happens, since she now has a scar. It just kind of happened. And he goes to kill her in her own home, and that's quite an intense chase, like this confrontation between the two. She finds a knife in her drawer, and that's this small fight between them. And he kills her, and as he kills her, he's shot dead by the police. Also, this nun who helped his brother in the first film is back for a few seconds. And she's only really in the movie to help the police understand that he's coming after the Mother Superior, and then to see the Mother Superior dead and faint. And the very last frame of the movie is that us thinking that the antagonist is dead, well, his eyes actually open at the very last frame of the movie. So will he be in the third installment? We'll see. So seemingly the reason why he's triggered to go on this killing spree, and also why he's killing these teenagers at the cinema, is that he's traumatized by how this Mother Superior told him that when you do something bad, you need to be punished. Meaning that every time someone makes a slight transgression, he feels like he needs to punish them. That's why he kills the people in the cinema, that seeing the murderer Santa Claus triggers him to punish the people who are misbehaving in the cinema.
Very naughty. Punishment is good. Punishment is absolute.
Punish!
But from there on, there is no punishment. It's just a full-on rampage. So it's so not even inconsequential, it's just inconsistent. It's just bad. This movie is really poorly written. There's no real motivation behind anything. It's just really stupid. And even, let's say, so he obviously hates the Mother Superior. He obviously has a deep-seated hate and probably also fear of her. But then why does he obey her command to punish? Because that's what happens. Whenever he's about to punish someone, he gets a flashback to her saying punish. Why? Punish, kill everyone who's been naughty? But is that what she taught him? I understand that the complexity of trauma and upbringing, that even someone who's caused you trauma, someone you hate, you might still take their philosophy or the teachings, the way they brought you up, the lessons they taught you, the rules they taught you. You might still abide by them. You might still become a part of you that will, even if you hate the people who taught you these things, they might still be an intricate part of you. And that's maybe why he punishes and why he obeys her, even though he hates her. But it still feels weird. It doesn't feel earned. I'm complaining about a really bad movie from 1987. Now I feel silly. Then again, that's what my channel is for.
Young and stupid. That was my problem.
Well, like, this is poorly written. This is some of the worst acting I have ever seen. Some of the worst writing I've ever seen. Some of the laziest filmmaking I've ever seen. The question is this so bad it's good? If you skip the first 40 minutes of this film and just go straight to where the actual movie starts, then yes, This is so bad it's good. This is traumatically bad. You feel abused so bad it is. Like, it hurts your brain, but it can be very entertaining in the same way, or as a result of that. So yes, the second Silent Night, Deadly Night film is so bad it's good. The first one isn't, it's just a mediocre horror movie, a mediocre slasher. And that's it, that's all I'll say about Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. This movie is a very big departure from the two first movies in that it brings in supernatural elements. It starts out with this dream sequence in this white hospital where the lead protagonist Laura is confronting this man who is lying comatose in a bed with this weird cage over his exposed skull or his exposed brain. And then she's chased down by Santa Claus and is killed by Santa Claus. Turns out she's actually, it's not a dream sequence, it's not real events, it's that she is a clairvoyant, someone with psychic abilities. And this movie will sound really weird when you talk about it because it is really weird. It's just an amalgamation of all these weird ideas that really don't have much to do with the first two movies. And not only is she clairvoyant, she's also blind, so she can see without seeing. I wonder if there's something thematically going on there. And she's at the hospital because the lead doctor there believes that psychic people can use their abilities to access the minds of comatose people, especially violent criminals, and help cure them or at least understand them through reading their minds and memories. They also believe that there is something like shared memories, that all humans share the same memories, and that the psychic people will then be able to read those memories and help. Honestly, it's a bit convoluted. It's just a mumbo jumbo, basically.
You know, I don't like your attitude.
But it tries to serve the plot because that means that there is this psychic link between her and the comatose patient, who just happens to be
Naughty is this!
the guy from the second film who was shot dead by the police, but comes alive at the very last frame of that film. Now, there's a lot to assess already here. So, opening scene is her accessing his mind. It's not her dream, it's her seeing a vision through his mind. How she's doing it is never really established, but she's reading his mind. She's also creating her own ideas based on that. She's not always been blind. She was blinded by a plane accident that killed her parents, it would seem, meaning that she does have visual memory. I guess that's why she can visualize things as much as she can. So, okay, we have the Santa Claus killer from the second film. It's not really a big surprise that he survived, but what is a big surprise is, well, the whole elephant in the room, the cage on his head. The metal cage with this glass dome and his exposed brain. Well, I suppose it's not exactly exposed, but he's missing his skull cap. Well, they do explain in the movie that after the police shot him, in order to prevent him from dying, they had to do intensive surgery on him. And basically had to rewire his entire brain. That means that he basically has no memory left, that he also is pretty much unable to speak, that he is very driven by his instincts, that he has no real way of reasoning, it seems. Meaning that he's basically Frankenstein. So yes, this movie is Skinner's 2 meets Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster. Why is that necessary? He's never shot in the head, he never takes trauma to the head in the second film. I know that the body is complex and that you can become brain damaged and enough for your mind maybe to need rewiring or surgery. Well, maybe not surgery, without being damaged to the head exactly. Like if you are lacking oxygen or if some other thing, you can become brain damaged as a result of that. But this kind of surgery shouldn't really be a response to that. It does seem a bit weird, and honestly, I don't really think that they really cared. This movie stinks or reeks of a movie that had an idea. They tried to get this movie filmed, and then they struggled a bit with finding the funding for it or finding someone who would make it. And then what if we make it a sequel? Because, if they get that franchise money, if they get that sequel money, at least there will be some audience, someone expecting to see something from the first or second film in this. And that might be how they sold it. That's why it seems to be not care at all about the first or second film. Not even surface level attention to it. And they don't really use this for anything. Like, they just seem to okay, we can take this character from the previous movie that has an established backstory. Yes, we recast him so he's not recognizable. And yes, we change his character completely through making him brain damaged. But at least there will be something in the movie that refers back to the previous installments. It makes it really weird to look at the context of the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise because this movie just sticks out. Or does it? We will, of course, see how much it sticks out when we talk about the later installments, but compared to the two first movies, this is a completely different story. That does, of course, sometimes refer back to the original because she can access his memories. She sees him seeing Santa Claus being killed a scene from the first film. She does see the struggles he's going through, and this connection also creates a link between them. So he is aware of her. He, for some reason, doesn't like her, and she gets more and more traumatized from accessing his mind from these experiments. So she wants to quit. Only that when she doesn't want to do it anymore, the head doctor tries to persuade her for the greater good, because he believes that this can cure. Like, if she can read his mind, she can find out what creates his murderous behavior, even though he's comatose, they can cure him. So for him, it's like the venom of the snake can cure a snake bite, something like that. That's his idea in this movie, that they can use the psychopathy of this comatose person to help cure other people, or at least prevent other people from becoming serial killers, from becoming maniacs, psychopaths, whatever. That is the main plot line, the main plot of this movie, or at least the incentives that created this mess that they're all in, because as she keeps having visions of people getting killed, waiting for her brother to pick up and driving her to celebrate Christmas. She's going to celebrate Christmas at her grandma's house, so she's waiting for her brother to pick her up. While she's waiting, this drunk Santa Claus walks into the hospital, because he can, walks into the room of this comatose patient. He belittles this comatose patient, makes fun of him, and that provokes him so much that he wakes him from his coma, because that's how comas work. Actually, I think there are some theories that actually can't be how comas work. I don't think those theories are well supported by the medical field, but there are at least some theories out there that comatose people are much more aware of their surroundings than they appear to be. Anyway, he's woken from his slumber, proceeds to kill the Santa Claus, and then the only thing on his mind, because his mind has basically been wiped, is to find this girl that he has a link with. And he does that by then going to her grandma's house, because his brain tells him that that's where she is. That's at least what the movie seems to be telling you. Okay, that's already a lot to take in, and this is the first 5-10 minutes of the film. It's much more convoluted than it should be. Yes, he breaks out. She is on her way to celebrate Christmas at the grandma's house together with her brother and the brother's girlfriend. Brother's girlfriend, who does look uncannily like the girlfriend. It's never mentioned in the movie, but I actually thought they looked so much alike that I was confused in one scene where they're nude together. It's a bit creepy that he finds a girl who's so similar to his sister, and like, something going on there, maybe, I don't know. The movie doesn't address it. Should I address it? Maybe. I am. So, for some reason, they're already in the car. Then the Santa Claus killer, the comatose patient, still finds the time to go through the hospital, kills the receptionist, goes out, finds a car, kills the owner, and then manages to drive to the grandma's house before our protagonist arrives. I have no idea how that works. It really shouldn't work. Especially looking at the car he has, it's a really bad, like an old car. He shouldn't be able to arrive faster, especially not that much earlier. Like, the amount of time he has with the grandma would suggest he's maybe spending at least 20-30 minutes there. And then at least 10-15 minutes in addition before our protagonist arrives. And we don't even know how long that journey is. It really seems weird that this is possible. This is a plot hole. This is actually a plot hole. The grandma takes him in thinking he's a vagrant. So yes, Laura arrives, established that she knows the house very well because after her parents died in a plane accident, more as just giving them a weird backstory and explaining why she's blind. Not why she's clairvoyant. I don't know if it tries, like other movies have done that after an accident you become clairvoyant or whatever, or psychic. This movie doesn't exactly tell you that. It hints at it, but that's about it. It's another one of those things that's just shoehorned in without really knowing what to do with it as a plot device or whatever. And grown up in the house, she knows exactly where everything in the house should be. And something is wrong because the grandma isn't there, they can't find her, the food is cooking at the stove, so something has gone on. And the brother, the girlfriend are just very quick to try to calm her down, saying, oh, she's probably just out somewhere, because sure, someone would just leave while the food is cooking on the stove. I mean, yeah, if she's senile, but she's not senile. She doesn't suffer from dementia. So this is not something someone would do. They should be much more worried than they actually are. And this is where the final element of the story comes into play as well, because as this is going on, the doctor has called the police for a police detective or a lieutenant to come and, examine the crime scene at the hospital. They also look at the surveillance tapes where they can see that after he got up from his coma, he was just wandering around a bit, like aimlessly, almost like he's brain dead, because he kind of is. They can see him whispering Laura or exclaiming Laura over and over, so they know that he's going for her. So that is actually explained. It is explained how they know that he's going after her, meaning that they go to her place. Like, they're also driving to the grandma's house to prevent any further crimes. The big problem here is that the lieutenant wants to shoot him dead. He doesn't understand why they didn't just kill him in the first place. I mean, he's a maniac. He has killed multiple people. Why did they go through so much effort of keeping him alive? And that's when the doctor explains to him that the way he sees it, understanding him, being able to maybe cure him, or at least read his trauma, they can, if not cure him, then cure other people, prevent these things from happening. The things I already went over before. That's when all this explained. A lot of this movie just takes place in their car or in the car of a protagonist and the boyfriend. That's a lot of car. Like, this movie is very cheap. A lot of it takes place in a car. The rest of the movie takes place in this house. I will add in the time code here because I didn't write it down, but I think 20-30 minutes, nothing really happens. They're just walking around the house, wondering where the grandma is at, taking a naked bath together while Laura is just somewhere. They are slowly, like, why is the grandma's car missing? Like, they're slowly piecing together that something is wrong. Laura keeps worrying, like, she gets these visions that something is wrong, not that she gets a vision of what's wrong. Suddenly, the comatose patient, in complete zombie Hulk mode, smashes through the door. Not just full force, he just smashes his arms through the door and wants to kill them, and they try escape, only that they can't really escape because he's already in the house, so they will stay in the house. They try to get help. They are just running around this house, trying to avoid being killed while essentially waiting for the help to show up in the shape of the police. And that's actually pretty much the rest of the movie. There's not much to talk about here. Yeah, the rest is just him sometimes killing someone, or maybe we think he kills someone, but he doesn't. One scene has him in a really cartoonish way taking someone and dragging them under a bed. What happens there? Like, his character doesn't really make sense. This is such a weird movie. Just, it's so full of different ideas. Her blindness isn't really used in the movie that much. There are a few scenes where it does come into play, like when she makes some noise in the basement and alerting the killer. But overall, like, because she's so familiar with the house, it never seems to be an obstacle to her. Only when it's convenient and when it can put her into a few uncomfortable situations, which really doesn't happen a lot. This should be a scary situation. This should be a thrilling situation. This should be an interesting situation to put a blind person in a situation where that person is being hunted by a murderer or a monster or whatever. That has been done in movies since, and probably also before. It's a very cool idea that the movie just doesn't utilize. It doesn't really do enough with this concept. It doesn't do its service. Barely even lip service. Also her clairvoyance, her psychic abilities. It gives her this spider sense, but she doesn't really use a spider sense. A few times where it's convenient, she can kind of sense so that something is wrong, but most of the time the movie just omits that she has this ability. Also, she doesn't seem to be in control of the power, so maybe that's why it doesn't really work for her. But honestly, it doesn't really work. It just doesn't work. This movie has so many ideas, but it doesn't really utilize them well. It doesn't really expand on the ideas. It just feels lazily written. It doesn't really seem like enough love or care or attention went into this movie. So what else is there to say about the movie? My overall impression of this movie is that it's a subpar horror movie, a subpar thriller. The first movie was a slasher. The second film was not exactly a slasher, but still mostly a slasher. This is more of a monster movie with slasher, thriller, supernatural elements. So it's more and more diverging from the original formula, which does make sense, I guess. That's how it often happens with these franchises. It's weird, and it's mostly boring, because actually I think when I talk about it, it sounds much more interesting than it actually is. I really want to stress how much of this movie is just people in cars and people running around a house. Not a lot happens. And it's actually just boring. Yes, it is bonkers a bit on paper. It's not terrible. I think it is slightly below average for a low-budget movie, which would put it below average in general. But it just doesn't look that great. The sound design is very cheap. The acting is not good, but it's not awful either. It's just not good. It feels cheap. It does have the feeling of a made-for-TV movie in that we do see boobs, so I guess that's not the case. But most murders happen more or less off-screen. We don't even see the kills. Or half off-screen, zooming up to a screaming face or seeing someone pulled under a bed. And the murders we do get, our kills, are not really that entertaining, meaning that, yes, it's even less of a slasher because it doesn't have entertaining kills. It has so many philosophical elements or so many things that could be interesting if the movie expanded on them, or if it just picked one of the subjects to deal with. But it's just all over the place. Again, I didn't hate it. I just didn't think it was that good. It's definitely not so bad it's good. It has no element of so bad it's good. It's weird. The writing is kind of bad, but it's not so bad it's good. Especially not if you see it. If you talk about it, yes, it can sound like it's so bad it's good. I don't see a reason why I could recommend this movie. It's just not that interesting. If you like the two first movies, there's especially no reason to watch this because it has virtually nothing to do with them. I had so much I had to omit from the other movies just to keep to keep it concise. But this movie, I said practically everything that's worth saying about it, except for maybe 2 scenes I didn't expand on. It's just not worth your time. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Initiation. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 has absolutely nothing to do with any of the previous movies in the franchise. There's really no reason to not just go in and watching this as a standalone film, because that's what it is. It's completely detached from anything that makes the franchise Silent Night, Deadly Night, for better and for worse, as we will talk about. If this review of this movie sounds interesting to you, go ahead and watch it maybe, even if you haven't watched the first 3 movies. And actually, I would say Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 is such a weird movie that maybe you don't even want it to be spoiled. In that case, yes, watch it. If you can watch Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, go ahead and watch it before I spoil it in this review, because I will spoil it. Because it's such a weird movie that it's almost impossible to talk about without actually just explaining what's going on in the movie. And therefore, if you want to watch a weird, Christmas-themed, cultist, witchcraft, druid, slug horror movie with dangerous hobos and really ham-fisted feminism, then maybe watch this movie without watching this review of it first.
Am I wasting your valuable time?
Yes, let's talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Initiation from 1990, which is actually only 1 year after the third movie came out. Talking about this movie is quite complex because it's just wild. It's art in a good way. Not exclusively good way, but in a good way, yes, this movie is mostly entertaining. So I'll just start talking about the plot. So the movie opens up in Los Angeles with the guy from Evil Speak playing a hobo who is picking up a half-eaten discarded burger, opens it up, complains about it there not being any cheese in it, and proceeds to eat it anyway. He hears screams from the roofs of this building, and out jumps or falls a burning woman. She lands on the pavement, and her lower body is still burning. And that's a good visual. 3 minutes into this movie and it already looks a million times better than the third movie, and actually the second movie as well, and actually also the first movie. This movie looks much better than any of the 3 preceding movies. So that's a good sign.
Because I was there.
The movie then jumps to our protagonist Kim and her boyfriend, who turn out to be journalists. They are working for this LA-based newspaper, and this is where feminism first comes up in the movie. This very clearly takes a stance against the male-dominated culture in journalism, in media, in society as a whole in the early 90s. And as such, she's basically delegated to do tabloid journalism or cover the most basic of topics without really using her journalistic integrity, her insight, her prowess to actually write the stories that she's capable of writing and that she wants to write. She's a very ambitious person. However, her boyfriend, that seems to be probably as competent as her, maybe slightly less competent. He is not only just assigned the most interesting stories, he is also assigned stories he doesn't really want to cover, but he does so because it will enable him further career advancement. And also he takes stories, and that's important for the plot, he takes a story about this lady that actually he doesn't want to cover because according to the hospital report, this person who died, who burned, it's just spontaneous combustion. Which is a thing, I don't think people really talk about spontaneous combustion anymore, but it used to be something people thought was real in the 80s and 90s. Today there has been more research about it, so it's not really something that people really take at face value anymore, but back then, yes, it was more of a thing than it is today. Kim doesn't buy that it's spontaneous combustion, and the guy just believes this is some basically tabloid journalism. This is boring and he doesn't really want to do this story, but anyway, he's assigned and everybody likes him. All the bosses are men. They're really condescending. Like when she asks to do the story, they say, oh, why don't you just go and make me a coffee instead? And then her female colleagues, she says, oh yes, boys will be boys. And this just sets the tone. This movie has a lot of feminism in it. Feminism that could work as a theme, could work as commentary in another movie, but it kind of just feels very forced in this movie. It feels very ham-fisted, and it also feels like it doesn't belong, for reasons I'll talk about later. But at the same time, I can actually see why it belongs in the movie for those reasons. Of course, she's not happy with her lot at this newspaper, so she decides to go out and cover the story herself. It turns out that this building that this person on fire jumped from has a bookstore inside of it. So the lady, Kim, goes there to investigate, she goes there to ask questions, and doing so, she kind of complains a bit about man. Lady behind the counter, the owner of the bookstore it seems, talks to her, gives her advice, gives her some clues on where to go next, talks about some butcher who views all women as prostitutes, contributing to this, oh, all men are pigs attitude this movie has, and then hands her a book, saying, oh, this one is for free, you would really like this. She kind of refuses, but she accepts the book. And also, while she is at the bookstore, this hobo from earlier approaches her and she thinks he's trying to grope her or just harass her, so she gets really annoyed, tries to get rid of him. And as she has accepted the book, she moves up to the roof to investigate the area from where this woman jumped. And this is where one of the things I like the most about this movie, this is where it's first introduced, at least from what I could tell. So what this movie really does well, and I think it's mostly done in the first third of the movie. I could be wrong about this. In the vicinity of the character creates these faces, or these things that look like faces. An example of this is when she's walking towards the roof. Above her, there's water damage there, and that water damage forms what looks like a face. And as she enters the roof, there is another facade that also looks like a skull, even more than the other one. She doesn't really seem to notice this too much, but, you know, it looks quite nice. It's quite interesting what is going on. This is quite mysterious. She proceeds to go, I don't know what compels her to this, but she proceeds to go to the ledge of the building and she stands on it and almost passes out, meaning she almost drops to her what I would presume to be death. And I honestly don't understand what compelled her to do this. Is it to understand the motivation of the person falling or jumping from the roof? Was it some power that she's yet to fully understand or discover that compelled her to stand on the ledge like this? I don't know. It's not really explained. It's one of those moments in the movie that is a bit weird, but so much of the movie is weird, but it's one of those that sticks out to me. Anyway, as she gets dizzy and instead of falling down, sits down on the ledge, the hobo emerges. He approaches her and she gets a bit weirded out by him, a bit scared of him. It becomes clear to her that he actually wants to show her something. So he goes to the drainage pipe of the roof and takes out this big grub. This big lava or whatever it is, it's disgusting, it's slimy, but he looks at it like out of curiosity, as if this is a nice thing I want to show you. This is a cute little thing. And she gets weirded out and rushes home and he's baffled at why is she reacting to this grub this way. Establishing some familiarity between him and the grub, but also expectation that she should react to it differently. Is this foreshadowing? I think it is. As she returns home to her apartment, she goes to her sink to clean her dishes and discovers it's full of cockroaches. That of course frustrates her and she gets annoyed trying to get rid of them, and then she cooks some really boring looking spaghetti. As she puts her plate on the table about to eat, she picks up the book. The first page she turns to has this weird spiral, this symbol of a spiral. And I forgot exactly what the movie tells you it's signaling. I will put it up on screen so you can see for yourself. But it's something about female source of energy. And as she has seen the spiral, she looks down and sees that her spaghetti is in the exact shape of the spiral. It of course weirds her out a bit. And then immediately after that, she just notices that actually from a certain angle, there's another face or skull in her apartment. This is the first time she really looks at this and realizes there is something to this. So we're not far into this movie. I think we are less than 20 minutes into this. We are already seeing weird symbols, weird magic, weird wizardry, weird druid magic, weird paganism, whatever it is. We are seeing grubs. We are seeing burning people. We are seeing good practical effects. Where does this movie go? Well, I'll tell you. I should already have given you a good idea of what you can expect from this movie, so if it already sounds very intriguing to you, then please watch it without having me spoil it any further. I will not talk about every single plot detail, so you can even finish watching my video without having it fully spoiled, but I will reveal some major things because there are some scenes I really want to talk about. I will put in some spoiler warnings, timestamps, so you can avoid them if you want to avoid having some of the more later moments of the movie spoiled.
Next thing you know...
So she continues having trouble at work. She goes to celebrate Christmas with her boyfriend and the boyfriend's parents. Now, the boyfriend is shown to be fairly progressive. He defends women's rights like that. The dad is a die-hard Christian. This movie really ham-fists its feminism. He says, a woman's job is to be at home, raising the children, taking care of her husband. Then it's revealed that she's born Jewish, she doesn't believe in any religion, and she doesn't care for Christmas. And this triggers the dad so damn hard. So much so that she has to leave the building. And as they leave the building, the boyfriend is not fully supportive of her. He's quite supportive of her. They kind of fall out, but the reason why they really fall out is that he doesn't exactly assault her, but they're just in the middle of the street and he wants to kiss her, and then he kind of starts fondling her a bit when she's upset. This is my reading of the situation because it's not actually stated in the movie, that she's so upset about him still being a man. Boys will be boys. He's still driven by his lust, even at a moment where she needs his emotional support and understanding. He's still driven by his physical needs. And this causes them to momentarily break up. After the breakup, she is then seen celebrating a picnic with owner of the bookshop and a bunch of other women. Here's where much of the movie's plot is revealed. These women talk about there being actually a third person in the Bible in the creation story in Genesis, I think. Eve was not the first woman, that actually a woman was created equal to Adam, that they were created from the same soil, but she would not submit to him. She would not lay with him. And as such, God punished her. She rebelled against God because God was on Adam's side and created a submissive woman for Adam because Adam apparently couldn't take a strong, independent woman. And that lady then becomes the serpent that leads Adam and Eve to temptation. So basically what I read from this explanation is that these women are a part of a cult, a coven, or whatever you would call it, who celebrate or are descendants of this original woman, original independent feminist, and derive magic from her. Because they do have magical powers. Kim, the reporter, she gets more and more into this coven, more and more into this group, but also her will is taking a bit away from her. And this is where we'll spoil more about the plot, so you can skip to the timestamp if you don't want more spoiled. Because honestly, it gets wild from here. Some of it you can expect from the movie, from what I already told you, and some of it you can't. Some of it is so wacky that you wouldn't be able to just guess that this is what's going to happen. So you've been warned. Chronologically speaking, I might be a bit wrong here. If so, I'll correct myself in writing on the screen. She's drugged. They try and lock her up in their apartment. It is revealed that the woman in the beginning of the movie, she's the daughter, or was the daughter, of the main priestess, whatever you would call her, the owner of the bookshop. And the reason why she died was she was too weak to perform a ritual, the initiation ritual, to become a proper member of this coven. And the role that Kim is playing is that she'll take her role in the coven, seemingly supposed to be the new leader maybe in the future, or also what it seems to imply, she will breed the next generation of witches or druids, whatever you'd call them. Again, some of this is hinted at, some of this is pure speculation from me, some of this is outright stated in the movie. It's not exactly clear about what's going on, but it does hint at a lot of things. So, yes. And right after this is revealed to her, she manages to escape the coven, acting very quickly and rushing out the door. They weren't really doing a good job of keeping her there, to be honest. Maybe they expected her to be there out of her own will. Then why would they drug her? The movie does have plot holes. I do like it a lot, but it does have plot holes. And she then seeks refuge with her boyfriend at her own apartment. The boyfriend comes over. Something has changed about her. She seems like she has been possessed by a lustful devil. She goes from being extremely distraught and sad to incredibly lustful and forcing herself on the boyfriend. Not so much so that it's non-consensual, but the boyfriend is actually a bit surprised and taking it back. But as she is forcing herself on him, the hobo walks in the door. The hobo walks in, sits down at the edge of the bed while they are, about to do their thing, turns on the TV. If you've seen my video on the second movie, you know how the second film actually uses scenes from the first film to be a movie in the second film. This does the same about the third film. So the third film, very quickly, the third film has some dream sequences or psychic sequences where Laura, the main protagonist, is infiltrating the mind of the killer, the Santa Claus killer from the second movie. And in one of those visions or dreams or whatever you would call it, she sees Santa taking out a knife to kill her. That scene, mind you, this is a vision scene. This is not something that actually happens in the third film. This scene is in this movie. This is what the hobo is watching on TV. If it's an ode ode to the former movie if it is simply just to tie it in with the franchise, because yes, this movie really stinks of what the third film also stunk from. Someone wanted to make a movie, they probably couldn't find the budget or someone to make it for them, so the only way they realized they could have this movie made was to slamp an existing franchise on it and then call it a day. This movie has nothing to do with the first 3 Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, for better or worse, but it really feels weird that this is a part of the franchise. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 is like Halloween 3. That's a good way to look at it. Like Halloween 3 is also druid magic, whatever. This is very similar to that, actually. I like it. It just doesn't really fit in with the franchise. It's just a bit weird. I think I just had to mention it. I should have mentioned it earlier, but I mentioned it now. Anyway, the hobo is there being happy watching TV while they're having sex. The man then suddenly realizes there's this guy in the room and they try to get him out. And he honestly just seems like a helpless fool. He doesn't really understand why people would be disturbed by someone having broken into their home. He's also very violent when he needs to be, so this fight with the boyfriend, again, spoiler warning, does result in the death of the boyfriend. He's maybe even bitten to death or eaten to death by this guy. There's a really cool scene where she's hiding under the bed and the hobo is just taking big chunks of the boyfriend's neck, making him bleed all over down. So you only see the lower part of his body, of course, but you see the blood rushing down. Really cool visual. Really cool scene. She is then kidnapped by him, taken back to the coven for the initiation ritual. They are now in this room. This whole room looks like a womb or some kind of living organism they're now inside of. And all the witches are there. They're all holding her against her will. They're all holding her down. While the hobo, now fully undressed, is doing the big no-no to her. He's doing the big no-no while all the witches are cheering him on and even start taking out all these grubs. The grubs probably also go somewhere where they probably shouldn't go. A lot of misdeeds happen in this scene. A lot of no-no words, YouTube no-no words happening here. After this happens, she has all these weird visions. We don't really know what actually happens and what she thinks happens, like what she sees. But she develops a tail, it seems. Like her lower body becomes almost like a mermaid's body. She sees someone hanging extended from the roof by the nipples. It looks like a boyfriend. This is almost Hellraiser level. This is actually a good way to understand what's going on here. This movie feels like Halloween 3 meets Society meets Hellraiser. This movie is really wacky. After all this has been going on, she wakes up, looks down, and the tail, or her lower part, it's still human, but she has this skin on it, looking like she actually did develop a tail or whatever down there, and sheds off the skin, and this Japanese guy comes in and yells at her, "Oh, you're now been initiated." So the Japanese people owning the butcher shop knows what's going on. It's the only time this is brought up in the movie, by the way. She enters the bookshop and they start treating her like an equal because now she's been initiated. She freaks out, talks to the police. Nobody knows where the boyfriend is at. She's trying to investigate what happened to the boyfriend. Nobody knows where he's at. She then shows up at a Christmas party where, because the boyfriend went missing, she is now granted a promotion. Everybody there is like, "Oh, isn't this what you wanted?" And she just freaks out. She starts chucking drinks at people, just pushing people away, really acting out of her mind, leaving the building, and as she leaves, she sees the hobo enter a car. And honestly, this scene just reminded me of something from Rosemary's Baby. This is such a wacky scene. And this is where we enter the final part of the movie. I will not spoil it completely, but there's one more thing I want to touch on. This magic she's capable of, it's actually much more physical. For example, the scene I talked about where her legs are combining to form a tail. It demonstrates that this is what her ability is. Her ability is to use her body, extend it, merge it together, and then create something new from it. Not the most useful magic, but visually very interesting. At one point in the movie, she combines her hands and arms to form a big flaming baton that, upon striking someone, makes them spontaneously combust. And that's just what this movie gives you. That's what I want to say about the plot. No more spoilers from here. The movie is visually very interesting. It reminds me of, in terms of its plot, in terms of its visuals, of Halloween 3, of Hellraiser, of Society, of a bunch of other movies I can't pinpoint right now, Rosemary's Baby in a few scenes. It's all over the place, but in a really cool way. Of course, it does have its problems. It kind of tries to do too much. It has some plot holes. Because it's a low-budget movie, it has some visuals that are not so great. It has very few locations it's filmed at. It doesn't have the best acting in the world. It doesn't necessarily have the best character development or character motivation. People are a bit too one-dimensional at times. I actually do like that they don't really explain that much. A lot of it is left to be a big mystery. If the movie wanted to not have it be a big mystery, then of course I can fault it for that, because you really don't know what's going on. You really don't know what this coven, what this religion is all about. Only a few snippets here and there. You don't know why the initiation is so important. You don't know exactly what her role in it is supposed to be. You don't know exactly what power it holds over her. In some scenes, it seems like she's very influenced by it. In some other scenes, it seems like she's still herself. It really seems lackluster in some ways, but it could be intentional. I don't think it actually lessens the quality of the movie that it's a bit all over the place in this sense. Talking about all over the place, I did mention earlier that the feminism feels ham-fisted and even contradictory. Yes, it established that men are pigs, that men are bad, that boys will be boys. Men are condescending and will not treat women as equals, even the most progressive of men will not treat women as equals. However, who are the bad guys of the movie? Who are the ones that go around killing people, assaulting them, doing no-no to people, having grubs, eat people, or go inside of people against their will? Who are enforcing their will on other people, who are trying to control other people? They are all women. And not only are they all women, they are all hardcore feminists. The evil people in the movie are the members of this coven that basically want to rule over men, who want to destroy men, who envision a world where they can be rid of the influence of men. More or less, because again, their agenda is not exactly explained. There are some scenes here and there that make it appear to be the case that they are really against men, but what we can at least see from the actions of the movie is that they have no problem killing everyone who is against them. They have no problem forcing non-consensual stuff upon people. They have no problem about using hobos or mentally disabled people to further their own goals. So what is the movie trying to say? Is the movie trying to say that feminism is actually bad? Is it saying that men are bad but women are worse? Is it saying that, well, men are bad, the patriarchy is bad, but hardcore feminism is even worse, or is at least as bad? So is it just trying to be moderately feminist, saying, okay, yes, equal rights, but hold it there, sister. We don't want too much of that. We don't want to give you too much empowerment, because then you will kill us. Or, which I think is more likely, is the movie just trying to be a movie and just trying to have this as an interesting plot device without thinking too deeply about it? I do think it is just playing on some trends of the time. It is scoring some easy points by making this a part of the theme without expanding or deliberating too much on it, but still having it as an ongoing theme, as an ongoing idea or problem that goes on throughout the movie, that is visible throughout the movie. I don't think the movie is that deeply concerned about what it's actually telling you in terms of its symbolism, in terms of its script, of its acting. I think it's just doing this for shock value, for trying to, with maybe more limited resources, tell you a compelling story that allows you to have more one-dimensional characters, to have more easily understandable goals. I think that's what's going on. I don't think the movie is actually as feminist or anti-feminist as it may appear to be. I think I should end my movie analysis here, or my movie review. There is so much to say. I like this movie a lot. Actually, when I watched it, I didn't enjoy it that much, because a lot of it is a bit too boring, a lot of it is a bit too convoluted, at least upon first watching it. But it is quite interesting and it is quite good. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movies in this franchise, but it is quite interesting. I honestly really can recommend you to watch this. If you like weird monsters, if you like insect horror, if you like practical effects, especially body modification, like if you've seen Society, you would definitely like this movie, I would argue. It has a lot of gross out stuff, it has a lot of weird occult stuff, it has a lot of mystery. The problem is maybe that it has all these elements. It takes way too much, crams it into one movie, and doesn't expand or utilize the different elements too much. There's magic in it, but it's almost not used. There's this mystic aspect of it with symbols showing up everywhere, but then it kind of discards that later in the movie. There are weird grubs, but it's never really explained why they're there, at least not properly, or what their role is. It kind of wants to do too much, so it's definitely not perfect, but it is worth a watch. This is a very underrated movie that people really don't talk enough about, and I think we should change that. Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker from 1991. The final installment in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise. There's not a whole lot to say about the Toy Maker, but I will start with the plot as usual. The movie opens up in this house. It seems to be Christmas time. There are Christmas decorations everywhere. It's night. It's late. This young kid walks into the room of his parents, doing something, naked, stares at them a bit, then walks out, hears a doorbell ringing, sees that there is this mysterious package present for him left there, and is about to open it, only that then the father comes in, interrupts him, opens the package himself, sees this weird toy, accidentally activates it so that it smothers him, kills him. Yes, it's a weird scene, this small little ball thing that kills the father. That's how it opens up. Fast forward a few weeks, it's getting closer and closer to Christmas Eve. The mother is, of course, grieving. The son is a bit distraught. But honestly, you don't know anything about the son because this is one of the worst child actors I've ever seen. Not in a frustrating way. He honestly looks like he's a bit dumb. Like he's a bit mentally disabled and have no idea about what's going on. It does convey a few other emotions throughout the film, but he's really not a good actor, which is a problem when he's arguably the main actor of the movie. But we also have the mother. She's quite okay. The mother has a friend who has a teenage son. They come over. They help them out a bit, through this tough time. Losing your father should be probably more traumatic than it's seen in this video. He is traumatized. Well, of course he is. He saw his father die, and he sees a commercial for this toy that is from this store called Pizzo, I think. Or Pezzo, like Geppetto. Geppetto from Pinocchio, I think that's where they have the idea from. So this toy maker is called Petto. He's from this old toy store that nobody buys anything from anymore, but they still do because they want to be a bit loyal to him. Or at least they just want to show some respect for old established professions in their community. As they visit the store, they are greeted by Petto's teenage son, Pino, who is a bit weird. He's acting a bit, I don't know, just, again, is he a bit mentally disabled? Does he suffer from something? Is he just suffering from something at home? What is going on here? As they go through this man follows them in there. He doesn't look too old. He's young, but we don't really know who he is yet. He trails them in the store. Then he goes on to talk to Petto and buy a few toys from him while acting a bit strange. Something is going on. But he's not the only one acting strange. Petto is also acting strange. He's being very malicious towards his son. He's being very heavy-handed. The son, because he annoyed the customers, is scolded. Like this father is really overreacting. Also, it seems a bit odd because the father looks like the Petto looks really old. And the son is not that old, so there's something about the story here that already doesn't really add up. But we'll see where this takes us. We then see this man take these toys home, where he starts dismantling them. Why? We're not really sure, but he's obviously investigating something. And as he's doing this, he's interrupted by his landlord. I think this is also where we learn that the name of this man is called Noah. And the landlord is demanding rent, so obviously this guy is not really doing that well if he hasn't paid his rent on time. He smooths things over with the landlord. He decides to give him a toy, this lava toy, which did remind me a bit of the carrion or the larvae from Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, the initiation, so there's a slight connection there, but not really. And as the landlord, now happy, drives home, the toy ends up entering his body in a really nice visual and coming out his eye, and it's really gross in a really cool way. I did like it. Actually, the same day I watched this movie, I watched Revenge, this short horror movie. It has a scene that is very reminiscent of this, that is very gross but very cool, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Revenge because that is a good film. I'm not going to make a video on it, but that's a very good short film. It's available on YouTube for free. Go and watch Revenge right now. It's good. Anyway, returning to Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, what we then see is the next day, the mother trying to cheer up her son, and of course also having to do her Christmas duties, takes this kid, Derek, his name is Derek, to the mall or to the supermarket, and there they encounter Santa Claus. Actually is Noah in disguise, and Noah behaves a bit weird, strange towards the son, so they leave, go home. Back home, while they're away, Pino, the teenage son of Petto, the toy store owner, has infiltrated their house and is sneaking around doing these weird things. They discover that he broke in, they confront Petto about it, and he explains that actually Petto and Pino used to live in the house that this family now lives in, so that's why he still has a key from it, and that Pino is a bit weirded out by him no longer living there. Then they leave the toy store, and as they do that, Petto then proceeds to go to where Pino lives. And it's not a normal teenage room, no. It's a basement. It's a basement with a entrance that Pino can apparently lock from inside, making it impossible to go in. So this establishes there's something really wrong going on. And we shall soon find out what it is. Honestly, not too much happens for a long period of this movie. It was until the last 20-30 minutes, this movie is really, really boring. So I'll just skip a few plot points and get to the meat of it, because honestly, much of this doesn't really make sense. And this is also where I will spoil things. If you want to see the movie for yourself without having it spoiled, skip to the mark in the video where I say there are like no longer any spoilers, because now I will spoil. So that was what I will do now. So the next 30 minutes or so of the movie is them finding out that Noah is actually Derek's real father. You don't really understand what happened, but he got her pregnant and then joined the army. He was in the army, and that 6 years now have passed. Also, when Peto finally confronts Pino, they are getting into a ruffle. They are getting into this fight, and because again, Peto is very abusive, but of course Pino also did something he really shouldn't do. So he ends up pushing Pino down a staircase, seemingly killing him. This seems to trigger something in Peto. While Noah and the mother are working things over, they are not at her house. At her house, the house that Pino and Peto used to live in, Derek is now being watched over by a babysitter who is not really looking out for him. She invited her boyfriend over, and they're about to do it. As the babysitter's being naughty, Peto walks in, looks at them, gets this angry face, leaves some toys, and moves out again. And this is where the movie gets a bit interesting, because these are killer toys. They are very capable for their size. There are tanks, cannons that punches holes through walls. Well, small holes, but still holes. There are riflemen who also shoot. These rifles are powerful enough to leave holes in walls, but if they shoot people, like, it's not the same as being shot by a real gun, meaning that the people can take a lot of abuse without dying. There's also this small thing that has buzzsaws and all these things, and it's just a really bloody, really gory scene that's really cool and really terrifying at the same time. Definitely the best scene of the movie, but it does have a few more cards on its hand, and it actually gets really wacky. And while this is going on, Noah has apparently told the mother that he realized something was wrong with Peto, that Peto has previously been in trouble for harming children, that Peto lost his family, his wife and son, in a car accident, and that ever since then, Peto has been a mean man, his store has been failing, and it's likely that he has this feeling that if he can't be happy, nobody can be happy. And that's why he's designing these toys that harm people, that these toys, these monstrous toys that are really hurtful. Well, that kill. That's what they do. That makes, of course, the mother realize that her son might be in danger, so they are rushing home, and they arrive home just as these toys have attacked the babysitter and the boyfriend. The babysitter's bloodied but still alive. The boyfriend, not so much. They are moving through this house looking for the son. The son is missing because he was taken by Santa Claus in a sack. Now they, of course, have to find the son, and that leads them to Peto's shop. This is where it went from just being a bit boring with some cool scenes to just wacky as all hell. So, at the shop, it turns out Peto was the one who died. At some point, this is where it turns out that Pino is a robot. And after Peto shoved him down the stairs and then reassembled him, Pino decided to kill Peto because he was getting increasingly abusive and kept breaking the toy. And he just wanted to put an end to this because he didn't want to be hurt by this man so much. Pino was built because Peto lost his son. So he wanted a new son. That explains why there's such a big age difference between the man and the son. The man and the robot, I should say. So that's why he was built. But he never really accepted Pino as his son. He was always abusive towards him, always negligent towards him, never loved him. At least that's what Pino claims, that Peto never loved him. So he just felt abused. He always needed a father, the father who wasn't a father to him. So it's a tragic love story, basically. But then Pino reveals his plan, that he saw the mother of Derek as being a loving parent, living, of course, in his former home. So he thought that if he could kill Derek, the mom would take him in as her new son, and live in the home he was supposed to live in. It's not the worst idea for a movie, or the worst plot, or the worst motivation, but it is a bit out there. And it is not the only thing that's out there, because as he reveals that he loves the mom, that he wants the mom to take him in as her son, he is stripped naked. And yes, he is completely robotic in this quite cool mannequin-like style. I actually really like the aesthetics of this scene. The whole workshop place is a really cool scene. It's a really good set. It's cool. I really like this scene. And he then strips naked. And because this is a Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise, he starts knowing her with nothing, because it's practically a Ken doll. So he starts no-knowing her while saying he loves her and wants to be her child. Why? Like, this is something you could see someone emulate if this is how they saw their parents love each other. Like, if parents were abusive, but then they loved each other when they were making love, and you can explain that in a movie, but this is not explained here. It's just so weird. I think this is just to make it even more disturbing than it already is. It's a very disturbing scene, to be honest, but also in a laughable way because it's so forced and it makes no sense. Then he goes on trying to kill the son. Noah comes in to help, and well, they kill or destroy the robot, leaving the workshop to form a new family. That is the movie. There's honestly not a lot to say, or more than what I just already said. The movie is boring. Almost nothing happens throughout most of the running time. It has that one cool kill, then almost nothing happens for an hour, and then you have the final showdown at the house and at the workshop. Those are two good scenes, and that's it. That's the only thing worth talking about. I don't think you should watch this movie just to watch those scenes. But I can see it's not exactly terrible. The movie is never bad. It's just boring and with semi-bad acting and a low budget. It doesn't feel like a movie that would ever be great. So if you think it might be worth to sit through all of that for one good visual and two good scenes, sure. But you could also just look up those scenes. You could probably find somewhere where you can find these scenes in the movie and just watch those scenes. If not, maybe you should get it. If you like all the other Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, then get this one as well. Then why not? Like, it's the fifth movie. Would you have 4 movies on your shelf in a franchise and not the 5th movie? Come on, be realistic. You would want all 5. That's the only other reason you should get this. I might sound like I'm hating on it. No, I just didn't like it that much. I think it had more enjoyment value and it was more competent than the third film. The sound design is also very bad. It is the sound design you could expect from these movies. You know, royalty-free music, royalty-free or at least cheap sound effects, music cues that these low-budget movies are always filled with, and it's just not really used in any exciting way. It's just not good. The sound design, I mean. Honestly, I was just not really sold on this film. Silent Night from 2011. The remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 from 1984. I should just start with the plot because honestly, this is a mess. This is not a good movie. The movie takes place in Wisconsin during Christmas, where this police lady is tasked with, keeping peace in this little, small, quiet town. It's never really established how big the town actually is. It seems bigger than it should be, but also smaller than it should be. At times, it looks like a city of maybe 100,000. At other times, it looks like a town with maybe 50 inhabitants. It's just one of the many, many problems of this movie. But I'll get into them as we go along. And as an example of this problem, well, the police station has one sheriff, her, one other police officer, and a receptionist / office worker. That's all. That's all the police that this town seems to have. Okay, so it's a tiny town then. Sure. And they are getting in the Christmas spirit. The other officer is a man. He's not just stupid, but he's also annoying and pathetic and a pervert. There's no reason to like him in this movie. It's not even just an underdog story. There's nothing likable about him, and that's what's so true for so many things about this movie. So she's pretty much tasked with doing everything on her own because the sheriff is not really there. She is about this Santa acting inappropriately. So she goes to him. There's this small, very, very bare minimum Santa fair or this Christmas fair in the middle of nowhere in this town, like this big open square or whatever it is, and this Santa sitting in the middle of it, and he's drunk and rude and, well, just not a nice person at all. And they do have a bit of a falling out, but while this is happening, we see a girl acting terrible towards her mom. Then she sees Santa coming over to her door. She opens the door for Santa, and he reaches in to give her a gift. But he then takes out this cattle prod or stun prod or whatever it is and tase her to death. She foams out of her mouth. It's filmed in a not very exciting way. So she dies. Santa leaves. There's this report that a Santa is going around killing people. One police officer goes to investigate this crime scene. The other police officer, the lead protagonist, goes to this house where there's also been a disturbance. This is the house where the movie actually opens up, where they just stole the opening scene from The Stepfather, which is great. They don't just steal ideas from some movies, they steal them from other movies, where the Santa killer is killing 2 people before acting naughty.
Very naughty.
It does seem like Santa is killing bad people. At least that's what it looks like in the beginning of the movie. And they discover this crime scene and figure out, okay, there's actually someone going around on a killing spree here, dressed as Santa. And while they're investigating this, we are getting another nod to the original movie, something we absolutely don't need, because it's never used. The original Silent Night, Deadly Night has an opening scene where this small kid visits his paraplegic grandpa, who's just sitting docile, immobile in his chair, not talking to anyone. But then when he is alone, the son is alone with the grandpa, the grandfather warns him about the dangers of Santa and that Santa will kill them all. This movie has that scene, only that the son is now maybe 16, 18. He steals money from the grandpa, and the grandpa just warns him about that he should watch out, that the dangerous times are ahead. Of course, no one believes that the grandpa just suddenly talked to him, and he leaves the building. A bit weirded out that this happened. And he's not shown to be a nice person, he shoves the nurse and everything. The reason why I say this is not used at all is that kid is in one scene in the movie. After this, only one scene. He's not the main protagonist as the kid was in the first film. This movie is just so that they can pretend it has anything to do with the original movie.
Very naughty.
And then while this is going on, the Santa Claus killer arrives at this set where they're doing, naughty movies, because this very small town has a naughty industry. Or is it a small town? We will see. So the Santa Claus killer comes in, kills the stylist, kills the photographer, both of them with not a scythe, takes it to the balls of one of the guys. The third person there, this naked woman, tries to hide in the bathroom, is then forced to jump out the window of the bathroom, survives because she falls in some trash, tries to flee. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but there are a few houses there, and you get to see a lot of the surroundings, and she flees into what seems to be a field of Christmas trees. She is caught by the Santa Claus killer. He chops off her foot and puts her in a wood chipper. And this is one of the few good visuals of the movie, him killing her with a wood chipper. That's one of the few things I did like. It's very grisly, but it is actually a fairly decent scene. Well, no, the scene is not good at all. Actually, it's really, really problematic. That kill is cool. The reason why I say this is really problematic, so this movie really doesn't know how to movie. It was not just a problem of them introducing a character just to have a scene recreated from the first movie and then not using that character again, except for one scene. It takes place in Wisconsin in December. It seems to be really, really cold. Also, I watch Red Letter Media. They talk about how cold Wisconsin is at this time of the year. So much so that they made it a constant bit in their videos. Yes, Wisconsin in December. The police officer is seen wearing this ushanka and warm clothes all the time. People are generally just wearing really warm clothes in this movie. So it appears to be cold. But as this girl is fleeing naked through this small town, we see her surroundings. The grass is green, all the trees are green, it looks lush, it looks like it's maybe early summer. But it's also a fair for Christmas trees. How are we supposed to feel immersed in a movie that takes place during winter, but looks like it's filmed probably during the summer, because otherwise this scene makes absolutely no sense. It's such a terrible attention to detail, or complete disregard for detail, and not only that, so it's talked about how the town is tiny, but also huge. And that's because in the background of the scene, we see apartment buildings that are maybe 10, 15 stories high. This is not something you would have in a small town in America. That's why I say maybe at least 100,000 people live in this place. But no, because this police department has 3 people there. This movie is so inconsistent. It's so poorly made. There's so little attention to detail. They didn't give a shit. And I haven't even talked about the terrible, terrible, terrible sound design, the terrible, terrible, terrible cinematography. The movie is bland and ugly to look at. Everything is gray, everything is oversaturated, everything is white or black, or there's no color, there's no life, there's no charisma, there's no acting talent. Why do they need to do this with these movies? Why do they need to remake something and make it so bad? Just to earn that fucking money, this fucking business. I did not like this movie. I really did not like this movie. And that's why I want to get this over with. So let's fast forward a bit. He's killing these people. The police officers are trying to investigate things. Michael McDowell shows up as the sheriff. It's also revealed that the father of the girl was a police officer in this town. So it's just a huge, everyone is a police officer. They are investigating different Santas to find the killer. They come across this weird Santa who talks about this story of a Santa whose wife was unfaithful or something to him, so he decided to kill her with a flamethrower. And since then, every Christmas has taken revenge on different towns by killing people there. Naughty people. And this drunken Santa is dismissed as being the culprit at first, although he is a suspect. But then later they start taking in these different Santas. Someone is being held in the prison cell. They're really struggling finding out who's actually the troublemaker in this. Some more people are killed. They find out that there is a connection between these people that he's killing. Not that it's well established, like there's this really terrible person, this really terrible priest who's killed, but he also doesn't kill the only witness to it, this older lady. He instead gives her money. So he does seem to care about it and only punish the guilty people until that's no longer relevant for the movie because this movie is bad. When I said that this son of the paraplegic grandpa is in one more scene, it's this scene because the Santa shows up at this house of a wealthy man, maybe the mayor, kills him, then goes on to find this couple, this son and this girl who has also been seen in 2 scenes earlier. And they are about to do it. But movie being movie doing movie things, movie doing movie bad movie trope things, has them not just having sex. The woman gets up, seemingly looking at the man, and goes into the bedroom. The man doesn't enter the bedroom, but the door opens. But then he comes out of the closet to scare her. I hate when movies do this. Who is about to have intercourse decides to ruin the mood by scaring her like this? It's something that so many movies do. It always breaks immersion because this feels so damn unrealistic. Who would actually do this? It's so stupid and I want it out of my movies. Anyway, this movie does it. And of course, it's actually the person who opened the other door. It's the Santa killer, so he kills her and he kills the boyfriend or this guy, the grandson. And the way he kills her is by impaling her on some antlers. Something we saw in the first film, another ode to the first film. That's a decent kill. Honestly, that's another okay scene. The kills in this movie are generally quite okay. Everything except for the kills is terrible. Like it's the worst of the worst. But the kills are so good or so decent that this, as a slasher, I can't give it the worst rating because it does what a slasher is supposed to do, give you good kills. It's just everything else about it fails spectacularly. And not just fails, but it looks like they didn't even try. They didn't even try to make a good movie. They didn't even just half-ass it. They did the bare minimum. And that's why I can't forgive this movie.
You know, I don't like your attitude.
There are a few more things I want to say about this movie, but I really don't want it to waste much more of my life than it already has. This is another huge problem that they didn't even do enough research or put enough effort into it to get the references right. The Santa killer is not saying naughty when he kills someone. He says not nice.
Not nice.
And he says it once. So it's not even something he says. At least do the naughty if you want to make a remake that is so terribly forced. At least say naughty and not nice. At least put in that effort. But no, this movie doesn't do that. It has a few more decent kills. It has some decent showdown at the end where there's a big fight. But again, it's terribly stupid with some very bad one-liners. This Santa is just going around killing everyone. So we have Michael McDowell facing off against the Santa killer. The Santa killer comes into the police station with a flamethrower, points it at Michael McDowell. And while Michael McDowell is aiming his pistol at Santa, he says, "Big mistake." I don't know what does he sound like? "Big mistake bringing a flamethrower to a gunfight." And then he's burned alive. Because instead of, "Oh shit, this guy has a flamethrower, I'll shoot him," as any person would do. No, you have to make a one-liner that takes so long to say that you're burnt alive. And not just that, a one-liner that is so stupid in context when you're saying it's a big mistake, but the mistake is actually you not firing at him while saying that line. This is garbage. This is movie garbage. This script is poop. This script is who greenlit this thing? This is so bad. This is really bad.
Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the gun.
Anyway, to round it off, the plot is, and this is why I also hinted at the plot being very inconsistent. The person who is the killer Santa is actually not the killer from the tale, the one whose wife betrayed him or, who decided to burn his wife alive, but it is his son. The motivation is that right after killing the wife, a police officer rolled up and shot dead the father. This police officer was the lead protagonist's father. The son of the guy with the flamethrower then saw this happen as it was happening. And that is why he wants to take revenge. That is why he's using a mask so he wouldn't be recognized. Because does that actually make sense? I don't think the movie actually explains why anyone would recognize him. He was a child at the time. This movie, man. I could be wrong about this detail, but I don't think I am. This is so fucking stupid. Like, oh yes, we will recognize this guy who was 7 years old at the time, now that he's in his late 30s or early 40s. Sure, that makes sense. Anyway, he went on this killing spree to take revenge on everyone involved in hurting his father. The priest was also involved in harming his father, so that's why he killed the priest. But then why does he kill everyone who seems to be naughty? That doesn't make sense. Like, they are having a cake and eating it too. They have it as a revenge story, but also like a vigilante story. Vigilante is the wrong word here, but someone killing people he thinks are morally corrupt. That's what this movie is doing. That's why it doesn't work. That's why, like, there's so many reasons why it doesn't work. This is another example of it. They're not consistent. They didn't write a consistent story. It just changes at the whim whenever it's convenient. Because this movie is bad. Because it was written by incompetent people. Because it was filmed by incompetent people. Because it was directed by incompetent people. And that's why I will leave it. This movie is bad, obviously. Even if some of the kills are good, it's not worth your time. This movie is really not worth your time. It just isn't. Really isn't. But that's what I have to say about this movie. It's the end of a franchise. Once again, the last movie in a franchise is a remake. Once again, the last movie of a franchise that is a remake is a terrible movie. Why does this keep happening? Why can't they just leave our franchises alone? Well, sometimes it's good. Like Halloween from 2018 is a good movie. Sometimes remakes are okay, or delayed sequels, as that movie was. But this is what I'm doing to hurt myself. I'm a sadist apparently, because this is no masochist. No, I'm also sadist because I show these movies. I guess make these videos so you can share my pain. Now that I've finished the franchise, I can give you some recommendations on maybe which ones you should see, why, and which one you should maybe stay away from, while also ranking them. The first Silent Night, Deadly Night is an okay slasher, nothing too special, but definitely not a bad Christmas horror movie if you want to see one. That's a low recommendation from me. The sequel is so bad it's good, but not insanely so bad it's good, simply because so much of it is just scenes from the first film. If you skip those, it will be quite enjoyable, and I would therefore recommend Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 as well. Now, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, better watch out. It's not a good movie. It's not amazing at all. It's not a good movie. It's not the worst, but it has no really redeeming qualities, to be honest. So don't really watch it unless you really love the franchise. Then maybe watch it, but I can't really sit here and recommend it to you. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, The Initiation, is insane. I can highly recommend it. It's not a perfect movie. It's maybe not even a great movie, but it is so wacky. It is so wild with its ideas that I have to give it a recommendation. It kind of blew me away. I still think about that movie a lot. So yes, I can give that a high recommendation. It's actually quite a competent movie. The sound design is bad, but everything else is quite competent. Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, the last film in the original franchise. It's mostly quite boring, but it does have a few good scenes. So maybe watch it just for the sake of watching the good scenes, or preferably if you can find the good scenes somewhere, then watch those instead of watching the whole movie. Instead of wasting your whole time. But yes, the scenes where the toys kill people are quite good, and then the final really weird robot scene. It's actually quite a long scene, but the one that takes place in the toy maker's basement is quite good. So I can recommend those scenes at least. Now, the remake Silent Night from 2012 is garbage. It has some good kills, but it frustrates me that so little attention to detail, so little thought went into this movie, that the script is so bad, that everything about it is so bad. It's so lazy. It's so awfully lazy and so awfully executed that it made me really angry. The funny thing is, it actually didn't make me that angry while watching it. I just mostly zoned out, but then talking about it afterwards, of course, triggered me a bit, because the more you think about this movie, the worse it gets. If you really don't think about it and just want a Christmas slasher, maybe you'll enjoy it. It's really not the worst movie I've seen, but that's not saying a lot. Anyway, that's all for me.